My name is Genevieve. I'm a paleoanthropologist and rock art researcher, and I study some of the oldest art in the world. I'm here today again for another episode of Caber 101, the Field Series, Season 3, with World of Paleoanthropology. And I'm going to start briefly here because I just got really excited. I wanted to show you a relic field. Now, a relic field, this is just a little mini one, but a relic field is basically a place where if you're out in the desert, it's one of the things that makes deserts so awesome, is that back in the day, there used to be dirt here, there used to be layers, and when people would make stone tools, they'd knock off little chips, they'd throw pieces away, things would break. They would land normally in the dirt like you'd find anywhere in the world, and those would get covered over time, and you'd have your normal archaeological layers. But what happened here is it went from that kind of Serengeti savannah style landscape during the Paleolithic and then early into like the Neolithic and the Holocene in our current era, and then it dried out. It went to what's called like desertification. So it turned into a desert. When that happened, the dirt lost all of its moisture, turned to dust, and blew away. And all the stone tools were stacked up in those layers over hundreds or thousands of years, suddenly just go poof, and they fall like a carpet onto the actual floor of the desert, which makes them incredibly easy to find. Now, you can't do the same things you could do with them if they were still in the archaeological layers, but they're also a fantastic clue when you don't even have to dig. Like you're walking around and you just start seeing stone tools everywhere. So I wanted to show you this because like I literally just picked a spot and sat down and like they're all around me, okay? So if you look, do you see right there that white one? There's another piece of flint right there. There's more. So there's lots of little pieces of flint. Some of those might be broken tools. Some of them could be what's called debitage. Those are pieces that come off when they're making the tools. And then I wanted to, oh yeah, there's that one right there too. So there's that. And then over here, this is such a pretty little one. I wanted to show you that one right there. So this one was like this. And so you can see it looks more what's called oxidized. So meaning that again, the sun has started to bleach it out a little bit. But if you flip it over, look at that beautiful surface. And let's see, it's going really close for you. So if you look at it, you can very clearly see what's called the bulb of percussion. So that's where it's like a ripple that happens through the rock when they strike it in a certain way. So it's one of the ways we know it's a human-made tool and it's not like some accidental nature fracture, okay? So that's one of the ways that we can tell. We can also look at the edges of the tools and see if they've been worked at all to sharpen them or resharpen them. So there's lots of little things that we can do to make sure. But here, I mean, I'm not even touching anything. And again, look, do you see? Like here, like it's literally there. I mean, you'll be able to spot them probably. I can barely see because it's so bright right now. It's very sunny and hot today, which I'm not complaining. I'm happy to be here. But when you look around, like literally, I just picked a spot and this is what it looks like. It's wild. And it's like that. I mean, if you look out to the desert there, you can see how there's more. There's stone tools everywhere. It's so cool. But it's also crazy because it's like you're actually walking over the archaeology, which is always kind of a weird feeling. But yeah, so this, if we're looking behind me, this is a beautiful rock shelter we've got back there. So again, perfect spot to live if you happen to be on this landscape back in the day and you were hunter-gatherers doing your thing. And so now that we've kind of established that this was a spot where people spent time, either, full time or for part of the year, or maybe it was a hunting site, but definitely they spent enough time here that they left a bunch of flint and sort of other debris behind them. So we know this is a spot that humans spent time. So this is definitely that first clue that now we can stop walking and we're going to start taking a look in the vicinity and see what we can find. So maybe I'll have more to add in a minute, okay? So that's it for now. Off to go do some field work and hopefully I'll have some exciting discoveries to share with you later on today. Okay, so here we are again. I'm sure but I'm incredibly sweaty. It's a very hot day out here in the field. So you can see behind me, that's where I was before. I was way down there and we were talking about the stone tools and the fact they were right on the surface. Obviously, that was a site where people spent some time. And so sure enough, walking around, looking in the vicinity, and look what we got. I mean, it's just beautiful. I'm going to try and come really close here so you can see it. Look at some of those beautiful, what they call the gazelles. I believe that, I'm not even sure quite what that thing with the tall ears is. There's zigzags. So there's all these amazing animals. I see what I believe is supposed to be probably like an ox of some kind. There's like a human warrior up top there. So hopefully you got a chance to see that. It's so bright, I can't really quite tell what I'm filming right now. So welcome to field work. You're like half blind, or you're dying from the cold, or something's happening. Usually it's usually something extreme happening. Um, but yeah, so here we are in the vicinity of the site, and we're finding art. So this is what is exactly what I'm talking about, is that learning to kind of think about, using tools, using living sites as your sort of pins in the map, and then you can kind of use that to go out in the vicinity and see what's in proximity. What's interesting here too, though, so two things. First of all, similar to Albeda, which was the Neolithic site over by Little Petra, which, by the way, I was reading about, the oldest occupation there is actually more like 10,500. So nice and old, very old site. And if you recall, they also had those gazelle-like, so they call them sort of mountain goat, Ibex style, with the big horns, which is exactly what we're seeing here as well. But the technique here is even a stronger pecking motion. So again, they're really hammering it into the rock here. So again, it could be potentially contemporaneous, so around the same age maybe as Albeda, so maybe Neolithic. We've got the stone tools nearby. Starting to add up, could even be late Paleolithic, because that era, that time frame is sort of still in the Paleolithic era. And then a site out here looks to be probably more of a hunter-gatherer site, maybe not quite such a settled village yet. So this even could be a little bit beforehand, and the people who later moved into the village, or maybe they spent part of the year on the land and part of the year in the village. During that transition from hunting gathering to agriculture, there was definitely sort of hybrids where they kind of did a bit of both still. So it could be something like that. The other thing, though, I really wanted to point out to you today, because it's fascinating and it's such a good example of why just because something's not accessible now doesn't mean that there wasn't a different configuration of the landscape back then, okay? So we talked about the idea of it being maybe wetter, there being grasslands, things like that. But one thing I wanted to talk about here was, I'm going to try and twist it out so you can see. There are two mountain goats, Ibex, gazelle, whatever you want to call them. So there's two of them. They are literally almost 15, 20 feet off the ground. So current times, you would have to be Spider-Man to make them. And yet, if we're going to look this way, do you see those huge pieces of rock that obviously fell off the cliff? So what we have is a really good example of, again, the physical landscape changing because of erosion and weathering and just natural geological processes. So now it would have been impossible. Well, not impossible. It'd be incredibly difficult to make those if you were a Neolithic person climbing a sheer cliff to peck some marks into a rock, but not so hard if there was an actual stone ledge down below it. And maybe even you could sort of see where that breakoff point is. Maybe there used to be something attached there. So likely around that time frame, so 10,000 plus years ago, this may very well, there might have actually been a shelf, a rock shelf along here. Because what we find, I mean, again, there are times for sure when there is art in weird, awkward little places, but a lot of times art is made in that sort of comfort range between slightly above the head to maybe down around waist level, right? So if you're going to be making, especially pecking, which is like a longer process of sort of sitting there and kind of laboring to knock your engraving in, you're probably going to do it at a fairly comfortable height. So in a way, looking at this gives us a sense of what used to be ground level, right? Or where there used to be a rock ledge. So if we look again, the art's so pretty. I'm going to give you another look in case the other look didn't work as well. But like, take a look at it. You can see it's all about the same height, right? So probably there used to be something that was attached along here that allowed them to walk up from their living site and make the art here in a way that was probably relatively comfortable, okay? So that's another wonderful example, though. You can't write places off now just because now they seem inaccessible, because they may well have been much more accessible in the past. So there's our thought for the day. Things to think about is geological change to landscapes. So hopefully that was a useful lesson, and I'll see you in the next episode.